Today in Zimbabwe, an amazing man who began a journey for democracy and the rights of Zimbabweans that many of us in Zimbabwe never thought possible. That man is being laid to rest today. Morgan Tsvangirai is a hero for all Zimbabweans. And as a young man, I watched him from afar and only put into practice in the last 2 years that it is possible to stand up to brutality and injustice as an ordinary person and see a change in our nation. I would like to ask you today, Geneva Summit for Human Rights and Democracy, to allow me a moment's silence as they lay him to rest in a little village in Buhera in rural Zimbabwe, to honor this man's life and his contribution for the many Zimbabweans that seek freedom today. Thank you. On the 19th of April 2016, a day after Independence Day in Zimbabwe, I sat in my small church office, disappointed and upset at what Zimbabwe had done to me as a person. Our government had stripped me of any sense of chance of living safely and prosperously in the place that I have the right to call home. As an ordinary citizen and pastor of a small church, I had no options to remedy the sorry state that Zimbabwe had become. What remained that millions had done was to leave the country. So I sat up and used two simple things that I had in that very moment: my phone and my voice. It was my last-ditch effort and a call to my countrymen to save our country. I posted that first video entitled #ThisFlag on Facebook, talking about how our government had taken us for granted, broken our constitution, and robbed our future. I spoke about how it was now our job as ordinary citizens to reclaim the pride of our nation as reflected in the emblems of our national flag. That video and many others after that cracked open a journey in the rise of citizen power that no one expected to see under the brutal dictatorship of Robert Mugabe. A movement of citizens standing up against corruption, injustice, and poverty was born. This flag citizens movement was and still is about holding government to account through the citizen's voice. This voice had been silenced for over 37 years through intimidation, abductions, murders, political violence, economic exclusion, and state capture. Our mantra was, if we cannot cause the politician to change, then we must inspire the citizen to be bold. I was first arrested on the 12th of July 2016 after helping to organize a national shutdown. We refused to go to work, to school, or open our businesses as a way of sending a message to the regime that we were no longer afraid of them and that we no longer tolerated their misrule. I was charged with subversion and accused of attempting to overthrow the government. I faced up to 20 years in prison. My pregnant wife and my 2 infant daughters were threatened with rape and death whilst I was in prison. I was interrogated, threatened with torture, and if I did not disclose who was funding me or if I vowed to continue. After a lengthy and dramatic court hearing, the courts had to let me go because the arrest had violated my constitutional rights. But the greatest victory that day was not the court's decision. It was the thousands of citizens who gathered at the courts from morning until night, demanding my release. We had not seen this kind of mass boldness in a long time. Upon my release, I immediately fled the country under the cover of darkness through a small border. There was a plan to abduct, torture, or rearrest me. My family too was in grave danger, so I had them taken out of Zimbabwe to a safer place. President Robert Mugabe was in the habit of threatening people personally, and he did that to me as well. He promised that there was no place in Zimbabwe for people like me except specially prepared jails, which I would later experience in my journey. He threatened pastors, he threatened ordinary citizens who had rallied with me in the protest. For close to 6 months, I lived in exile, unsure whether going back would be strengthening of the citizen power or it would be the demise of the little hope that we had garnered. You see, hope is the only thing that has kept Zimbabweans going. When we have lost every opportunity, when we have lost sometimes even the willpower to carry on, we have always maintained that we have hope that our nation will somehow change. We had hoped that one day we would find it within ourselves to respect our children's future enough by standing up today. On the 1st of February 2017, I returned to Zimbabwe and I was immediately arrested at the airport. I was charged with subversion for the events that I had escaped from in the previous year. And additionally, I was also charged with attempting to throw the government for a protest which I had led with fellow Zimbabweans at the United Nations General Assembly in New York. I was thrown into the notorious Chikurubi maximum security prison along with convicts of crimes ranging from rape, armed robbery, and murder. The harassment was unbearable, but I had no choice but to face it and survive it. Out on bail, I began yet another journey of more arrests, intimidations, torture, and harassment that lasted 11 months. My passport was taken away from me, and I had to report to the police twice a week for a whole year. I was arrested and imprisoned again for praying with university medical students who were protesting poor learning conditions. I was arrested yet again whilst in the middle of a sermon on Sunday at church for posting a video on Facebook in which I spoke about the shortage of fuel and the increase of basic food prices. Why did I start this? Why did I come back? Why did I continue, you may ask? You see, I found out something after that first video and after that subsequent arrest. I found out that there is no one who brings a fight for Zimbabwe that is sustainable and passionate than a Zimbabwean. There are no heroes coming to save us except ourselves. What we needed was to find that courage to stand for ourselves. I came back to Zimbabwe because it was time to model a Zimbabwean who refuses to run, who rejects intimidation and demands that their voice be heard. And it was worth it. It was worth it because you cannot put a price tag on restored dignity and true freedom. We had longed for Mugabe to just die away, but that would have robbed us of something even better. You see, our expectation of a better Zimbabwe and a better nation was not in the hope that our oppressor would die, but that whilst he lived, we stood up to him. On November 18, 2017, Zimbabweans took an opportunity to confront Robert Mugabe's rule. We stood together in a powerful act of unity and demanded a new start. It was unthinkable that we did what we never thought we would see in our lifetime. We had to play our part and send a message to both Mugabe and future leaders that we had found our voice. On 29 November 2017, after 17 months of arrests, jail time, court appearances, and intimidations, the High Court of Zimbabwe ruled that due to a lack of evidence, I was not guilty of the charges of subversion and the many charges of inciting public violence and the attempt to overthrow our government. It has been said by our new president, who was also part of Mugabe's regime, that Zimbabwe is open for business. However, the question that must be asked is Zimbabwe open for freedom? What we have discovered is that the citizens must never accept a government that muzzles their voice, brutalizes us, and subverts our will. It is not enough to promise free and fair elections. There must be the corresponding enactment and observance of the laws that guarantee freedom and diversity. We ask you to take note of the culture of violence, oppression, and denial of fundamental constitutional rights that has been the culture of the past. It must not continue to happen in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe cannot go into the future with money for business only. She must walk confidently into tomorrow with real freedom for her people too. That is why I choose to continue till today to speak truth to power and never, ever be cowed into silence again. Long live the freedom of the voice of the Zimbabwean citizen. Mwariva kuitira zvakanaka. May God bless you. Thank you. You want me to raise that? Oops, upside down. You want me to hold it up? Yeah? That way, yeah. Thank you. This way? Yeah? There we go. Thank you.